Being a musician is a fairly difficult task to undertake, especially if you're an independent musician. So I'm going to share 6 reasons why being a musician is difficult, but that doesn't mean it is impossible. The very first one is that being a musician is not an instantaneous result type of career. So you don't get the instant gratification. What this actually means is if you make the song today, you may only start seeing financial gain or visible success later, maybe much later. 2 to 3 years, for example. Another example of this is in sync licensing, for example. It takes about 2 years to start seeing the royalties that you made for an album. So if I make an album this year, I'll only see it in 2 years' time. And in general, it's like that for all the royalty types. So you only get what you worked hard for much later. It's not exactly the same if you're focusing on live performances or CD sales, for example, but generally speaking, it takes a lot longer to start seeing the royalties, which are usually the bulk of the revenue streams. Number 2, society in general does not really understand what it is to be a successful musician. It's not like the other professions where if you just get a degree and work a normal job, then you're considered successful within that field. Generally speaking, for musicians, there is this pressure that you have to be chart-topping, signed to a major record label, and being heard on every radio station, which is probably impossible to ever expect of any individual to achieve superstardom in any career field. Whether it's being a doctor, you never hear of a doctor making new discoveries on how to transplant things. You never hear of a mechanical engineer, for example, discovering a new way to propel a ship, for example. But for some reason, for musicians, the bar is you have to be super successful or be Drake, for the example. So that is another thing that results in being difficult because you will not have support from your loved ones because they simply don't really understand how to measure success in being a musician. With that said, isolation and burnout is very common amongst musicians because you don't have the 100% support, typically speaking, because no one really understands how to support you or what it means or the expectations that they can have for you in your music career. Generally speaking, most people are chastised for going down the path of being an independent musician, but that is simply because they don't understand why or how it is to be a successful independent musician. And number 4, another reason why being an independent musician is difficult: rejection is the name of the game. If you cannot handle consistent rejection and criticism, then you are probably not suited for this kind of career because 9 times out of 10 you will be rejected. That is just the nature of the game, or you'll be negatively criticized. It is how it is as an independent musician because music is subjective. It's not like a profession where 1 equals 1 or 1 plus 1 equals 2. It is more nuanced. There are preferences. There are other things that you will probably never really understand at play that will require you to understand, even if you don't really understand, why you're getting rejected in certain applications and certain submissions. But rejection makes being a musician that much more difficult, and you constantly have to be improving and reevaluating why you're being rejected in order to improve your output and improvement rate, or success rate, sorry. The 5th reason: balancing the commercial side of things and the actual craft. So the business side of things, making money, making music that will make you money, versus the actual craft, the enjoyment of making that beat that is shuffled for whoever wants to rap on it. The marketing side of things makes it very crucial to understand how you're going to link your craft and how you're going to link the finances, and it's a balancing act, especially for independent musicians, as you most of the time are doing these things yourself. So understanding how to strike that balance is necessary, otherwise it becomes even more difficult. If you can't do it yourself, you try to get people involved, but that usually means they're taking some of the money that you should be using to propel your music career. With that said, limited resources are a killer for most independent musicians. We generally need money, especially in the startup, to buy the certain type of equipment and facilities to facilitate how we're going to move forward. But limited resources does not mean it's impossible. This is where you need to be able to network and balance the network and making music, obviously. That's where it really makes or breaks how you are going to propel your music career, because everyone who's an independent musician is called independent because their resources are limited and not as big as the major record labels, for example. So the limited resources will always require you to be a little more frugal or a little more conscious of how you're spending the money and how you're going to get the money to propel your music career. That doesn't mean don't make music or pursue this music career. You just have to understand how to go about raising money or getting access to some form of the resources you need to propel your music career. If you're interested in this kind of content, head over to skillmusicsa.com and sign up to my mailing list, and you'll be kept into the loop when I release videos just like this one or when I have a new blog post out.